Hey everybody, welcome to What the Flick, HBO's Westworld. We're making it happen here. Tim, Bibbs, Alonso, the original, the show's pilot. Wow.
This is an impressive pilot. In fact, this pilot is better than the original Westworld movie.
Which I meant to go back and watch this weekend, and I did not. But you were better than I.
I rewatched it this weekend, and it's a fun flick, but it's not very thoughtful. Kind of the most interesting thing it has going for it is it predates the idea of the computer virus, certainly calling it that. So when the computer virus takes over all the robots, there's a whole room of scientists who says a virus that affects machines? I don't believe such a thing is possible. And it takes place in the future, so that's kind of funny. But it's basically this premise. There's a theme park in the future, but this one actually has Westworld, Roman world, and medieval world.
Oh, that's right.
And the machines in that one go crazy and start killing everybody, particularly Yul Brynner as the proto-Terminator. It's a cool flick.
Yeah, the main thing I remember about the original Westworld from seeing it as a kid is it's a very sort of 70s movie, and that you think that James Brolin is going to be the hero to save everybody, and it's Richard Benjamin. Richard Benjamin has to save the day.
And also, that's kind of the point, is that, you know, the original was all about the human beings, and oh, how tragic is it that all of these human beings in this theme park are going to be ravaged by these robots. And science fiction has changed and adapted to fit the interests of modern science so much that when you do Westworld today, this show is entirely about the plight of the artificial intelligence. It's kind of like Ex Machina done really, really large and with cowboys.
Yeah, but I think just in terms of as how a pilot goes, this is going to be one of those ones that people look at, because in terms of world building and character establishment and what are the stakes and what are the problems that are going to happen down the road and all that stuff, in 69 minutes they cram in a lot.
Yeah, this was super dense. I feel as though a lesser show would have had the Teddy is a host reveal like at the end of the pilot. Like that felt like it was supposed to be a big thing, and I was like, oh wow, they're getting to that already? Like,
yeah, like that's only one of the cards this has to play. Yeah.
So many things are going on.
And if you think about it, this pilot sets up so much. I mean, given how realistic all of these robots really, really are, I keep expecting like Anthony Hopkins to pull his face off. He replaced himself with a robot many, many years ago. They talk about, management has different ideas for what Westworld's capable of. Did anyone else watch Dollhouse?
I watched a few episodes of
did.
I watched the whole thing.
Whole arc.
I watched the whole thing, and I will say this: Westworld. It looks like they watched Dollhouse to see what worked and what didn't work, because Joss Whedon's Dollhouse, which had its moments, wasn't a great show, had a similar basic premise where people were being used as playthings for the rich and the powerful, and they were being programmed to do whatever you like, and then they started remembering all the things that were done to them. But also, one of the most important plot points, especially in the second season, was you doing this for pleasure, doing this as a vacation, doing this for prostitution is a huge waste of time and resources. There's got to be something else going on. So I'm curious to see where we're going.
There's a more sinister.
Well, there has to be. We've created. They're robots, and they talk about it in this pilot episode. Yeah. There's no reason for them to be as realistic as they are. We hit good enough now, and now we're hitting like Uncanny Valley, where
I was going to say the Uncanny Valley.
Yeah,
totally.
It's impossible to tell them apart now unless you really, really know what you're looking for. And what is the point of creating that technology and funding that technology with billionaires' dollars, unless you're going to do an invasion thing, you're going to insinuate them into politics or whatever.
Yeah,
you're
or create an army, something.
Yeah, replace the human race with a more effective a race that won't destroy the planet. And because Anthony Hopkins talks about human race, this is it. Yeah, we've done all we could.
And evolution and mistakes, and how this is the end of mistakes. Yeah. This is the end of where we're going. We're just going to live forever at this level right now.
And then robots, we can keep updating those. That could even be superior in many ways. So what do we need us for?
Which is why I find Anthony Hopkins is just always an exceptional actor, but his character is so interesting because you get the hint that his motivations are so much different than everyone else's, and that he's pulling strings, but maybe to the point where he's not in control, and that we'll start to see what he's wrought, what he's done behind.
Right. Well, Ben Barnes and the French lady have that whole conversation about the other thing that's going on, and who knows what the other thing is, and have we figured? Has anybody working there figured out what the grander scheme of the whole thing?
But I don't even think that's Ford's thing. I think that's a different thing altogether.
Possibly.
Oh, interesting.
I think Ford's off the reservation.
He might be off the reservation. He might be the only one with pure motives, for all we know. I think what we're looking at with Westworld, and what it always was, and what frankly most science fiction is especially when it's used as a cautionary tale, it's this Frankenstein myth. We create this thing. We cannot control this thing. This thing destroys us. And I'm curious to see how closely the TV version or the new TV version of Westworld, if you don't count the 1980 series, will hew to that and make that its point. And the other series I think about a lot when I've been watching this pilot was Battlestar Galactica, the rebooted series.
Right.
Which tackled that issue of what it means to be human and what it means to be artificial, and is there a difference, and if so, who cares?
Right, and let's not forget also Crichton's, one of his big latter-day claims to fame is Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
Which is about the, how far is humanity going to go to amuse itself, and how dangerous a creation will they make, and when does that creation stop being under our control?
I would love to see a TV version of Jurassic Park where it's all about the velociraptors and their psychological
What does it mean
plight.
to be part frog?
Right?
How am I?
What am I? What is the meaning of all of this?
I could not find this guy's name on IMDb, but I want to give a shout out to whoever played Old Bill, the prototype robot.
I think that was Michael Wincott.
Really?
He sounded and looked like him. He was under a lot of makeup, so I could be wrong. I think it was Michael Wincott.
Michael Wincott is an accomplished mime on top of everything else.
that-
because all the
God.
the subtle servo things was like that is some primo robot acting.
Made me wonder if you could do it just as an actor, or if that was like an element of CGI to it, or like a visual effect.
It might have
because
been,
it
but
was
it was
really
subtle.
cool.
If so, it was
really
subtle
cool.
and it was really, really effective.
Yeah.
That's the other thing we have is this whole room, because that was another element of the original Westworld, where the people who ran the park were in danger, but only because the machines collapsed and they ended up getting stuck in their hermetically sealed rooms and they suffocated to death. I don't think we're going to do that here, but what occurs to me is, again, we know the plot of Westworld basically. We know the machines rise up basically in the original story. They have an entire basement full of defective machines that were too dangerous.
With their eyes wide open and totally naked and super creepy and veiny.
Yeah, I'm waiting for that to come to pass and just for everyone to just start getting slaughtered.
Well, and the thing is, and for a movie, obviously, that's a 3-act premise. But if this is a show and an ongoing show, do we reach a point where there's some sort of like human-robot détente? Like down the road, is there going to be? Will there have to be kind of will there be a revolution that ends with some sort of compromise? I mean, it's fascinating. There's any number of ways they could go with this.
This
thing.
might be one of those shows where the plot of the original will have to give way after a while. Like we burn through it.
If we're not there already.
This can't be like a 5-season arc that leads to the robots attacking. So there has to be more. Whether or not they'll tackle Future World, who the hell knows? But there's a lot to be played with here. And what I really admire about the pilot is how much it was so much about plot. So much of it was about laying the seeds for plot, creating issues of suspense.
Who is Ed Harris and what does he want?
He's I don't know if he's like, 'cause here's the other thing that I think is really, really cool about Westworld now that you would never have thought of in the 70s because the technology didn't exist. This is basically World of Warcraft where the NPCs gain intelligence and start becoming real. This is a massively multiplayer game
I see
that
what
people
you're
are playing.
saying.
A lot of people are just going into Westworld to screw around.
Right.
Ed Harris is out there to...
He sees the raid at the end.
Yeah,
he wants that top.
He's either going to raid or he's out to break the game. He's like some kind of beta tester. Maybe he's actually hacking it in some way for his own agenda. I mean, when you look at when he scalped that guy, it looked like there was like a maze at the bottom of
like
it.
some kind of code or.
Is that a clue to some sort of hidden storyline within Westworld? Or is there actually something sinister going on? Is he Slugworth?
Yeah, see,
Willy Wonka out to
storyline that
destroy
you're
the...
supposed to find or not.
I thought that was like a corporate logo or something, but then I did watch this season on Westworld, and at one point you see that pattern done as like a crop circle or something, but like in the sand, like a really giant version. So yeah, there's something going on there where he clearly is trying to pierce the veil. But to what end,
And
as they would say
veil?
on The Sopranos?
Ford's or the management's or
Yes,
some other game
exactly.
designer.
I just want to say, whoever came up with the reveal, because obviously, again, we talked about James Marsden, turns out he's a robot. Great. That Ed Harris wasn't the Yul Brynner character really got me.
Yeah.
Like, I totally thought, like, who are you going to get to be the Yul Brynner character? Ed Harris? Yeah, he's been in a couple of Westerns. He's a badass. I buy that. And then he's not. And I'm totally excited to see where that goes.
And he's a totally different character than has appeared in the previous one, right?
Absolutely.
So we could go anywhere.
The safety is off.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, and HBO, there is precedent for this sort of thing. We've talked about The Leftovers here, and season 1 was the book. and then they were done
Yeah.
with the book. And so then season 2, they got to completely make up something entirely different, and season 3 also will be just building on that TV created mythos. So they are not bound to anything here.
No.
Once they get past the initial motivating incident of the robots fight back, then what?
I want to talk about, there's this bit where we see a mother and a father and a son that are in Westworld, they're vacationers.
They come across
The black family with the horses?
Yeah. Who brings their kid to this place?
And-
Like, it just seems like a weird thing. There should be like a family week when there isn't a whole bunch of murder and
Whores.
sexual assault and yeah, it just seems like a weird thing to expose your kid to.
Maybe there are zones within Westworld where it's the river,
Yeah.
and like you keep them out of the saloon, and I don't know, but you're right. There is something about this whole thing where, as they even say on the show, like it's they follow the story until they want to shoot or fuck something,
Basically, yeah. And again, that's the whole thing. I worked in beta testing for video games for several years, and so much of it is about scripting. What's supposed to happen here. If you interrupt that process, does it break? And I'm watching this show, and I'm just seeing the code break down. And on that perspective, as a gamer, Westworld is so much more rich than I thought it would be. I don't know.
Yeah, and they sort of get into that, like, the host's ability to improvise when something goes off script, and they can either gently guide themselves back to the script, or they could go in a different direction. They have lots of different paths and choices to go, but the element of chaos that they can't predict when the one guy decides he doesn't want to die in that scene and instead starts shooting everybody and dumping milk on them, like, that's scary because, like, we didn't write
That's
that.
super off script.
You need to patch that update of Grand Theft Auto 5. That's the other thing. Was we think about the sort of sandbox games where you can do anything you want. You can follow the script. You can decide, okay, I'm gonna track down that bank robber, and that's a story I'm gonna follow in Westworld. One guy talked about going pure evil.
Yeah.
For like a week, and how that was the most satisfying experience of his life. You can do that. You can just go around a killing spree, whatever. That's monstrous. And the more, and it's kind of even though it's
That's what you're
cathartic,
paying for. That's what you're here
Right,
for.
but
I know, it's just
exactly.
interesting.
And is
And
that
they
in
know it.
itself despicable?
the more real it gets. I mean, in a video game, there's still just action figures. Basically, it's a little kid breaking his toys, but whatever. That's okay. But then once they have AI, where's the line?
Right, but getting back to the scripted loop thing, it's interesting that once we find out that James Marsden is also a robot, it's like that whole scenario ostensibly unfolds on like a daily basis.
Yeah.
Without
For
any
whom?
guests, right?
Like Ed Harris knows about it, but then Ed Harris seems to know a lot of things. But
Yeah.
otherwise, all of that stuff would unfold. The raid on the house. For whose benefit? Like, who's there to watch it?
Yeah.
So that's it. And I don't know. I'm not saying that's a bad thing in the show. It may be that that's just there for someone to happen upon, or I don't know what.
Yeah.
I mean, that's another great thing that really good pilots do is raise a lot of questions
Yeah.
that we can then spend the next months or years figuring out.
But here's my thing about the Westworld pilot, and I'm not complaining, but it's a very distinct choice they made. They chose plot over character, because most of the characters we meet, what they're talking about, what they're concerned about, is the plot of the show. I'm not seeing a lot of subplots going on.
Right,
I'm
but
not
the way they respond to things tells you a lot about the characters.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think that's a really, really brilliant way to tackle this because, yeah, you want to have the best of both worlds. You want to be engaged in the characters, and a lot of our characters are stuck in a loop. Dollhouse had a problem with this as well, where if your protagonist is getting her memory erased in every single episode and there's no actual evolution from episode to episode, why do you care from episode to episode?
How is this not an anthology show? basically?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, like, the interests of a bunch of scientists saying, oh, well, what if it's going to break down? Like, how interesting can that possibly be? Turns out, really interesting. Like, it really should be narrative death. On paper, that's a terrible idea structurally. And yet, mad props to Jonah Nolan.
Jonathan Nolan.
Jonathan Nolan. I like to be called Jonah, whatever. Everyone... He's been credited as that and other things. Like every single person involved is knocking this one out of the park. And I'm really excited.
And I think obviously they've created this in a way that it's going to be able to build outward. We're going to find out, where do people get on the train? How is Westworld advertised in the world at large? Where is Westworld?
Is it a real place? Is it virtual? How do guns work? How do they keep guests from killing each other? Like,
is it on another planet?
Right.
Yeah.
It is a world. That was one of the, when I saw
They have,
Westworld
like,
for the first time,
at
I
least
assumed it was
83
on another
sublevels.
planet. It's not. It's whatever. It's interesting. Like, maybe Westworld, the people who are in charge of Westworld, maybe they're paying to vacation as scientists to create a Westworld.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Why not?
Why not?
Why not? Let's break down all the barriers. Everyone who runs HBO is vacationing in HBO world.
The three of us just take our. Oh, wow, that was quite a review. It's like we're actually critics. Amazing, right?
So yeah, anything can happen today, folks. We're gonna see where this thing goes, and we hope you'll join us because we're certainly gonna be here for the rest of the season. Thank you.
Stay worldly.